There's a moment in life when you realize that the people you love most are willing to sell you. Not your body, not your soul, but your integrity. When I was 22 years old, my family, the Ashfords, one of the wealthiest families in Connecticut, sat me down in our marble dining room and offered me everything I'd ever dreamed of. A penthouse in Manhattan, a $5 million trust fund, a position as CEO of the family empire. All I had to do was one thing: betray the only person who ever truly loved me. I said no, and that decision cost me everything. This is my story. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to know what happened next. My name is Marcus Ashford, and I was born with a silver spoon so big it should have been registered as a weapon. My family didn't just have money, we were money. My grandfather built Ashford Industries from nothing in the 1960s. Real estate, investments, pharmaceutical ventures. By the time I was born, we had 3 estates, one in Connecticut, one in the Hamptons, and a penthouse in Manhattan that overlooked Central Park. Growing up, I never once worried about anything. Private schools, Ivy League education, a Range Rover on my 16th birthday. My parents, Victoria and Richard Ashford, gave me everything except one thing: attention. My father was always away closing deals. My mother was always at charity galas, maintaining the family's public image. I was raised by nannies, tutors, and the deafening silence of privilege. By the time I turned 20, I was the classic rich kid stereotype: arrogant, directionless, and spiritually empty. I partied at exclusive clubs in Manhattan. I dated models. I wasted my parents' money on stupid ventures, a nightclub that failed, a tech startup that went nowhere. My parents didn't care. They just funded it all. Then, in the summer of 2019, everything changed. I was at a private beach club in the Hamptons when I saw her. Sophie Chen. She was working as a server at the club, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. She was putting herself through Columbia, studying social work, volunteering at homeless shelters on her days off. She was real in a way I'd never experienced before. I was instantly obsessed. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she had something I didn't: purpose, direction, a soul. I pursued her relentlessly. And somehow, impossibly, she fell for me too. For the first time in my life, I felt alive. Sophie didn't care about my money. In fact, she hated it. She'd push back when I tried to buy her things. She challenged me. She made me want to be better. "Your money doesn't define you, Marcus," she'd say. "But your choices will." For 6 months, I was the best version of myself. I volunteered with Sophie at shelters. I started taking business seriously. I even had conversations with my father about sustainable business practices instead of just profit margins. My parents noticed the change. But not in the way you'd think. One evening in December, my mother called me into my father's study. Both of them were sitting there, looking grave. My father was smoking a cigar. He only did that when he was angry. "We need to talk about Sophie Chen," my mother said, her voice ice cold. I felt my stomach drop. "She's not appropriate, Marcus," my father continued. "Her family has nothing. No connections. No status. She's beneath us." I stood up immediately. "With all respect, she's the best thing that ever happened to me." My parents exchanged a look. The kind of look that said they'd already made a decision without me. "Sit down," my father commanded. And that's when he told me the truth about our family that would change everything. "Sit down," my father commanded. I sat. My father leaned back in his leather chair, the kind that probably cost more than most people's cars. He took a long drag from his cigar and looked at me like I was a disappointment he'd been expecting for years. "The Chen family," he began slowly, "has been a problem for us for quite some time." I didn't understand. What are you talking about? My mother spoke up, her voice sharp as a knife. Sophie's father, David Chen, was a former business partner of your grandfather's. They had a falling out in the 1980s. A very serious falling out. They were building something together, my father continued. A real estate development project worth millions. But your grandfather, he maneuvered David out, took the profits, destroyed his reputation in the industry. David never recovered. He lost everything. I felt cold. That has nothing to do with Sophie. It has everything to do with her, my mother snapped. David Chen died 3 years ago, broken and bitter. His family has been struggling ever since. And now his daughter, by pure coincidence, or so we thought, has attached herself to you. Sophie didn't know. Didn't she? My father interrupted. We had her investigated, Marcus. Thoroughly. Sophie knows exactly who you are. Who we are. This isn't love. This is revenge. This is a Chen plotting against an Ashford. My heart was pounding. You're insane. You're paranoid billionaires who think everyone wants something from you. That's where you're wrong, my father said, standing up. He walked to his desk and pulled out a file. He threw it at me. Inside were photographs, emails printed out, documents. And there, in one of the emails from Sophie's laptop, which they'd apparently hacked, was a message to her mother. I'm doing this for Dad. Once I'm close enough to Marcus, we'll have leverage over the Ashfords. We can finally get justice. I felt the world tilt. No, I whispered. This is fabricated. It's not, my mother said quietly. We've verified everything. My father walked around his desk and placed a hand on my shoulder. For a moment, I thought he might show compassion. Instead, his grip tightened. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. You're going to end this relationship. Today. You're going to tell her it's over. You're going to make her disappear from your life. And in return, we're going to give you what you've never had, real responsibility. Real power. He walked to a painting on the wall, an original Monet worth millions, and pulled it aside to reveal a safe. Inside this safe, he continued, is documentation for a $50 million trust fund in your name. Liquid. Accessible immediately. There's also a position waiting for you, President of Ashford Industries. You'll run the company. You'll have authority. You'll have everything. My mother added, we're also prepared to offer you the penthouse in Manhattan. Fully renovated. Yours to keep regardless of what happens next. But, my father said, his voice dropping to something darker, if you don't end things with Sophie, if you continue this relationship, you get nothing. Not a penny. Not a position. Not even an invitation to family events. You'll be dead to us. Completely and permanently erased from the Ashford name. I stood there, frozen. The weight of the choice was crushing me. You have 24 hours, my father said. End it with Sophie, or lose your family. Your fortune. Your future. Everything. My mother smiled coldly. What's it going to be, Marcus? I left that room in a daze. And for the first time in my privileged life, I truly understood what it meant to be trapped. The money. The family name. The empire. All of it was a cage. And I had to choose, stay in it or lose it all. I didn't sleep that night. I spent 16 hours pacing my apartment, staring at those emails, trying to make sense of everything. Part of me wanted to believe my parents were lying, that this was some twisted test of my loyalty. But deep down, I knew it was true. I'd suspected Sophie had secrets. The way she sometimes looked at me with this strange mix of love and guilt. The way she'd ask questions about my family's businesses. The way she'd sometimes withdraw, as if wrestling with something internal. I'd chosen to ignore it because I loved her. Because with her, I felt human. But now I had to face the reality. Maybe that love was built on a lie. At 6 a.m., I called her. "I need to see you. Today. Alone." We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, neutral territory, away from my world. Sophie arrived looking nervous. She had that guilt-stricken expression I'd seen before, the one I'd never quite understood. "Sophie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She went pale. "Marcus, do you know who my grandfather is? Do you know what happened between your father and my family?" The silence was deafening. Tears started streaming down her face. "Yes." That single word broke something inside me. "My father," she whispered, "spent his entire life trying to recover from what your grandfather did to him. He told me stories. Bitter stories. He said the Ashfords had destroyed our family. That they owed us. When he died, I promised him I'd find a way to make it right. By using me? No." She reached across the table and grabbed my hands. "Marcus, it started that way. It did. I took the job at the club to get close to you. I wanted to, I don't even know, hurt you somehow. Make your family feel what my family felt." I pulled my hands away. "But then," she continued, her voice breaking, "I actually met you. And you weren't the arrogant, heartless billionaire I expected. You were kind. You listened to me. You cared about things that didn't involve money. And I fell in love with you. Real love. I swear to God, Marcus, everything I feel for you is real." "Your mother knows," I said coldly. "I saw the email. You told her you were doing this for your father. You told her you'd use me for leverage." Sophie's face crumpled. "That was before Marcus, I sent that email months ago. I haven't been in contact with my mother about this since. I was going to tell you everything. I was terrified, but I was going to tell you. When? Soon. I promise. I was scared you'd leave me. And I couldn't bear that. I should have been angry. I should have walked out. But instead, I felt something else. Compassion. Because I understood. I understood what it felt like to be trapped by family expectations. By the weight of loyalty and obligation. Sophie had been trying to escape her family's bitterness, just like I was trying to escape my family's greed. "My parents gave me an ultimatum," I said quietly. "End it with you, and I get everything. The company, the money, the family, or lose it all." Sophie's eyes widened. "What did you tell them?" That was the moment. The pivot point. The choice that would define everything that came after. I thought about the penthouse. The $50 million. The company I could run. The empire I could control. The legacy I could maintain. I thought about my father's hand on my shoulder. My mother's cold smile. The safe full of money and power. And then I thought about Sophie. About the way she made me feel when we volunteered at shelters. About the conversations we had about meaning and purpose. About the life we could build together that had nothing to do with money. I took a deep breath. I told them no. Sophie's face went white. "No. Marcus, no. I'm leaving my family, Sophie. I'm giving up everything. And I'm choosing you." People don't understand what it means to lose everything when you've never had to struggle before. It's not just about losing money. It's about losing your identity. For 22 years, I was Marcus Ashford. That name opened doors. It got me into restaurants without reservations. It made people take me seriously. It was armor against the world. The moment I told my parents I wasn't ending things with Sophie, that armor shattered. Within 48 hours, my father had his lawyers contact me. I was officially being removed from the company. My trust fund was being placed under a legal freeze. Apparently, there were clauses about moral conduct that could void it entirely. The penthouse reassigned to my younger brother, Thomas. My parents sent a message through their lawyers that I was no longer welcome at family events. My name was being removed from the Ashford Foundation's donor list. Any business partners would be informed that I was no longer affiliated with Ashford Industries. I was being erased. But the financial devastation came later. You see, my lifestyle had always been subsidized. My apartment in Manhattan, paid for by a family trust. My car, company lease. My credit cards, all connected to family accounts. Within 2 weeks, every single one was cut off. I had maybe $200,000 in a personal savings account, money I'd earned from some minor investments. For someone like me, who'd never had to budget for anything, $200,000 seemed like a fortune. It wasn't. New York City is a vampire. And when you're not part of the wealthy elite anymore, it drains you dry. My apartment lease was $7,000 a month. I couldn't afford it. I had to move. Sophie and I found a studio in Astoria, Queens. $1,200 a month. It was the size of my parents' walk-in closet. One window that faced a brick wall. No doorman. No view of Manhattan. And it was the first place I'd ever truly lived. I had to get a job. My Ivy League degree and family name meant nothing in the real world. I wasn't qualified for anything. I'd never worked a day in my life. I ended up working in a call center for an insurance company. $18 an hour. Answering phones from angry customers for 8 hours a day. It was humiliating. But it was real. Meanwhile, Sophie finished her degree at Columbia and got a job as a social worker, making $42,000 a year. We combined our incomes and suddenly we had a budget. We had to plan our meals. We had to use coupons. We had to take the subway instead of Ubers. I discovered that I'd never actually done anything myself. My nannies had dressed me. My tutors had done my homework. My parents' assistants had scheduled my life. I was 22 years old and couldn't cook a meal or change a tire. I learned. Slowly. Painfully. 3 months after leaving my family, I was sitting on the floor of our tiny apartment, eating ramen noodles, and I broke down. I don't know how to do this, I told Sophie, tears streaming down my face. I'm worthless. I'm useless. I can't provide for you. I can't. Sophie took my face in her hands. You're doing better than you think, Marcus. You went from having everything to having nothing, and you didn't break. You're working a job you hate. You're learning. You're trying. Do you know how strong that is? I gave up $50 million for you, I said bitterly. For ramen noodles. You gave up $50 million for yourself, Sophie corrected. You gave up a cage for freedom. The money was never yours, Marcus. Your family was renting your soul. I wanted to believe her. But some nights, when my back ached from work and my hands were raw from cleaning the apartment, I wondered if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. 6 months into our new life, something happened that changed everything. My brother Thomas called me. I almost didn't answer. I hadn't spoken to anyone in my family in over half a year. But something made me pick up the phone. Marcus. My brother's voice sounded different. Strained. I need to talk to you. Not on the phone. In person. Can you meet me? We met at a neutral location, a diner in Midtown that was far enough from either of our worlds. Thomas looked like hell. He'd always been the golden boy, 2 years younger, more athletic, more charming. But now he looked haunted. I made a mistake, he said without preamble. A huge mistake. And I need your help. Thomas, I'm not in a position to help anyone. Just listen, he interrupted. Dad had me take over as CEO when you left. I thought it was an honor. I thought it meant he trusted me. But the company... Marcus, it's not what you think it is. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents. Financial statements. Contracts with names I recognized. Shell corporations, offshore accounts, pharmaceutical deals that looked wrong. Dad's been moving money illegally for years, Thomas explained quietly. Through the company. Bribing government officials in developing countries to approve medications that haven't been properly tested. People have died, Marcus. Hundreds of people in Africa and Southeast Asia. And the company knew. We knew. I felt sick. I tried to say something to Mom, Thomas continued. She told me to keep quiet. Said it was none of my business. That questioning Dad's methods was questioning the family loyalty. Why are you telling me this? Because I can't live with it, Thomas said, his voice breaking. And because I think you were right to leave. You were right to choose your conscience over money. He pushed another document at me. This is a USB drive. It contains everything. Emails. Records. Proof of the bribes. Proof of the deaths. Dad's planning to move everything offshore next month. Once he does, it'll be impossible to prove anything. But if you go to the authorities now, with this evidence, they can prosecute. They can shut it down. I stared at the USB drive like it was a bomb. If I do this, I said slowly, I destroy our family. I destroy Dad. I destroy everything. Yes, Thomas said. But you save lives. You stop more people from dying for profit. Why didn't you do this yourself? Thomas looked away. Because I'm a coward. Because I'm afraid of losing the family too. But you already lost them, Marcus. And you seem... okay. You seem happy, actually. Happier than I've ever seen you. So maybe losing them is the best thing that can happen. He stood up to leave. Whatever you decide, I respect it. But Marcus, don't let the family's silence be the reason more people die. He left the USB drive on the table. I sat there for 2 hours, just staring at it. I could turn it over to the FBI. But that would mean destroying my father's empire. It would mean my mother losing everything. It would mean Thomas would likely be implicated too, even if he was trying to do the right thing now. Or I could throw it away. Pretend I never saw it. Go back to my quiet life with Sophie, working my insurance job, eating ramen. The Ashford name meant nothing to me anymore. But the truth meant everything. I called an FBI field office. The investigation took 8 months. 8 months of FBI agents coming to our apartment. Of me testifying before a grand jury. Of my family's lawyers threatening me with lawsuits. Of watching my father's empire collapse on the news. Richard Ashford was arrested on charges of conspiracy, bribery, and involuntary manslaughter. My mother went into hiding for a while, but eventually returned to face lesser charges. Thomas cooperated fully and received immunity in exchange for his testimony. The Ashford Industries scandal was the financial story of 2020. It was everywhere. News outlets, business magazines, true crime podcasts. The family that had everything was exposed as criminals. And I was the one who exposed them. The media called me a whistleblower. Some called me a hero. Others called me a traitor to my own family. I didn't see myself as either. I just saw myself as someone who finally chose to do the right thing. Sophie stood by me through all of it. She didn't say, "I told you so," when my family fell apart. She didn't gloat. She just held my hand when I watched news coverage of my father's trial. She cooked me dinner when I came home emotionally exhausted from depositions. She loved me not despite my family's fall, but because I was strong enough to walk away from it. The money started coming back about a year into the investigation. The government seized Ashford Industries' assets. Because I was a cooperating witness, I received a portion of the seized funds, around $8 million. It was meant as restitution. It was meant to make up for what I'd lost. But I didn't feel like I'd lost anything. In fact, I realized I'd gained something invaluable. I had my integrity. I had Sophie. I had my self-respect. I used most of that money to create something new, the Ashford Foundation for Ethical Business Practices. Not as a tax dodge like my family's foundation, but as a real organization designed to audit pharmaceutical companies and ensure they're operating ethically. Sophie and I got married in a small ceremony in Central Park, the same park I used to look out at from my family's penthouse. We wore simple clothes. We had 30 guests. It was perfect. My parents didn't attend. They're still dealing with the aftermath of the investigation. My father is awaiting sentencing. My mother has retreated into a quiet life. Thomas rebuilt his life. He works for a non-profit now, actually using his business degree for good. Sometimes I think about that moment in my father's study when he offered me everything. The penthouse, the $50 million, the company. I think about how close I came to taking it. And I'm grateful every single day that I didn't. Because money can buy you a penthouse with a view of Central Park. It can buy you a company. It can buy you power. But it can't buy you freedom. It can't buy you integrity. It can't buy you a life where you can sleep at night knowing you did the right thing. I spent 22 years in a golden cage. And it took losing everything to realize that I'd never actually had anything at all. Now, at 30 years old, I have a wife I love. A foundation that's actually making a difference. A job that feels meaningful. An apartment in Astoria, Queens that I pay for with money I earned. And I have something I never had before. Peace. My family tried to buy my loyalty. And I chose something far more valuable. I chose myself. Looking back, I don't regret anything. Not the poverty. Not the struggle. Not the family I lost. Because I gained something immeasurable in return. Authenticity. My story isn't unique. There are thousands of people born into privilege who struggle with the same question. Is loyalty to family worth the cost of your soul? The answer, I learned, is no. The people who truly love you won't ask you to compromise your values. The people who truly matter won't try to buy your loyalty. If you're watching this and you're in a situation where your family is asking you to choose between them and your conscience, choose your conscience. Every single time. It might cost you everything. But I promise you, you'll gain something far more valuable. You'll gain yourself. Thank you for watching my story. If it touched your heart, please leave a comment. Tell me your story. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family, courage, and the power of choosing integrity over money. My name is Marcus Ashford. And I chose poverty over blood. And I've never been richer.